part of it, and I was like, okay, this will be interesting to react to. I had some strong feelings about it already, so let's just go ahead and listen to that.
Afghanistan. After Al-Qaeda terrorists attacked us on...
I don't like that I'm the only one who even tries to pronounce the name right. The reason I started saying Afghanistan is because Michael Brooks used to say that. And, people tell me, they're like, wow, this white boy is actually pronouncing Afghanistan correctly. But no one else does it. Everyone else says it the most American way possible. It's like, Afghanistan. And, but that's neither here nor there.
9/11, our brave warriors, special forces, they quickly deployed to defeat Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. They accomplished their mission rapidly and effectively, and that is when they should have returned home. But the elite, they wanted to nation build, getting us into a 20-year war with no clear mission or strategy, causing massive suffering and wasting trillions of taxpayer dollars. Afghanistan.
I mean, what I don't like about the analysis so far is that she's implying like that the original invasion into Afghanistan was a good thing. All right, like we invaded, we took out Al-Qaeda, and then if we would have left, it would have been okay. Like, no, we would have taken out Al-Qaeda, and then there would have been more of a power vacuum, and then a group like the Taliban would have taken power. Right, there are all these warring extremist groups, and the U.S. intervening and killing a bunch of people in one of those groups, while also accidentally killing a bunch of civilians and destabilizing the region further, isn't the answer, right? The answer was to never, back the Mujahideen in the 1980s the 70s and 80s when Afghanistan was trying to build a democratic, actually structured government. But instead, we funded the Mujahideen and Osama bin Laden, and now you have this situation where the country is torn apart by all these warring extremist groups, which, Tulsi's saying that's because of the occupation, because we decided to stay there and nation build, but it's like, extremist groups would have been fighting over the country in the power vacuum that exists there regardless. But yeah, the U.S. just dumped trillions and trillions of our tax dollars into this war, and, their presence there caused many Americans to be killed, obviously increased the death count to Afghans as well. So, and I also agree with a lot of what she's saying, of course.
The question is this: will we hold accountable the elite, the political leaders, the mainstream media, the military leaders, defense contractors, etc., who got us into and kept us in this foolish, short-sighted mission to turn Afghanistan into a quote-unquote democracy, costing us over $1 trillion and countless lives? Unlikely. And will we blindly allow the elite to drag us into new, even more costly military adventures in the name of spreading or protecting democracy? Probably. Out of aloha, we weep for the suffering that the elite have already caused. Out of aloha, we must stop them from causing even more.
Agree, Tulsi. But the problem, with being an anti-war Democrat, or I guess she's an independent, an anti-war independent, and just targeting the elite, is you're never going to convince the elite to give up power. You're never going to convince the elite to stop doing wars for expansion overseas, because the elite are capitalists, and they exist in a system that incentivizes imperialism and incentivizes the destruction and controlling of other countries' political and economic systems, so that U.S. multinationals or Western-based multinationals can maximize their profits. The incentive to maximize profit and always chase money, not only that, but the accumulation of money and capital, is what's built into the system. That is what's considered success, right? So there's a motivation built into the system to enter wars like Afghanistan to control their natural resources and stop their Marxist political system from coming about that's going to block the U.S. off from those resources. And until you change the property relations at the core of society, that incentivize capitalists to do these wars for expansion, you're never going to stop the wars for expansion, right? You could have a million Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbards run for president and talk about the elite who are sending people to fight and die in wars for expansion overseas. It's true, right? But the only way forward is actual class struggle, as a revolutionary movement of the working class, the people who work for these elite, for these capitalists, and the people who send their kids to fight and die in these wars for capitalist expansion overseas. They need to organize and completely take over the government and the state apparatus, right? Not take over the Democratic Party, not vote for a bunch of anti-war Democrats, a revolutionary movement that seizes control of the state apparatus and uses it to destroy the bourgeois class, the capitalist class who are sending us into all these wars, right? Just kind of saying we're going to stop the elite from sending us to these immoral wars, right? A lot of people agree. I agree with Tulsi 100%, right? But you need to bring that back to the class struggle and center the class struggle, like I said when we were before we watched this video, and bring up that property relations allow one class of people to become the elite, through not working at all, through expanding, using the armed bodies of the state, and through suppressing the working class and keeping them in their position of servitude. So, Tulsi Gabbard has no problem with the loss of life in war in general. She doesn't want American lives lost in war. Very good point. Otherwise, she doesn't care. She'd still prop up the military-industrial complex through proxy wars. Yeah, and you kind of got that hint through what she was saying there, right? She's like, oh, we went in and took out Al-Qaeda, which was good, but then we should have pulled out the U.S. troops because we left too many U.S. troops in danger. It's like, well, the U.S., one invaded to fight Al-Qaeda, who were led by Osama bin Laden, who 8 years previously we had been funding and arming, and also, members of the Mujahideen who we funded splintered off and became the Taliban. So the U.S.'s goal was never just to take out Al-Qaeda, right? That was always just the goalpost. This is what we got to do. That was never their goal. Their goal was always to nation build and to control Afghanistan's natural resources. And yeah, you can see there she's basically supporting the intervention but not supporting the occupation that followed. It's like, no, getting involved there in the first place was a mistake that led to increased destabilization. And, the U.S. never invaded to fight Al-Qaeda, right? They invaded to see their political and economic interests carried out in Afghanistan, which they've done in many ways. Eddie, can I just say you looking nice today? Thank you. I really appreciate that. I bet you're looking nice too. I can't see you, which is one of the, I wish I could see everyone in the chat. That would really make Twitch elite, but I feel like that might lag out my computer. This stream is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters of Afghanistan. Yes. Does everyone know what that's from? I'm going to look it up here. End of Rambo movie. Dedicated to Mujahideen. Oops, I spelled Mujahideen wrong. Let's see if we can find it. So at the end of Rambo 3, it says this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters of Afghanistan because they were fighting against the Soviets. This was Osama bin Laden's far-right terrorist group, the Mujahideen here, who not only were being propped up by U.S. arms and weapons, but you see how these ideas, these imperialist ideas, make their way into popular culture, right? This is at the end of Rambo 3. They're propping up support for the U.S.'s funding of the Mujahideen fighters, who 8 years later they would invade Afghanistan to apparently fight, the same people they had armed and funded when they were fighting communism. And it's worth pointing out, the U.S. was funding and arming the Mujahideen well before the Soviet Union ever got involved in Afghanistan. And actually, that's part of the reason the Soviets got involved was because you had all these extremist groups running around with weapons and funding from the Western imperialist powers. So the Soviets wanted to go help out the Marxist party in Afghanistan, which was kind of a top-down movement, but obviously it would have been, the destabilized situation would have been much better if that Marxist party would have taken power in Afghanistan rather than the U.S.-backed Mujahideen and their splinter groups. But that's not how things turned out, and now Afghanistan's in a destabilized disaster, and the U.S. has a lot to do with it. So, Hassan, entertaining people on Twitch and generating revenue for Twitch is labor. Oh, now we're having some good Hassan debates in the chat, I see. Afghanistan asked the Soviets to help. I mean, yeah, that party did. Now I can't think of their name. The Democratic People's Party of dang it, someone help me out in the chat. What was the name of the party, the Marxist party in Afghanistan who took power right before the U.S. funded the Mujahideen? PDRA? Okay, People's Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, is that what it is? Thank you, chat. Leftist is when no house. Leftist is either when mansion or when no house. Anyone with a nice apartment where they live with their buddy from college like me, not a real leftist. Until I get either a mansion or I'm homeless. People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. Oh, okay. I said People's Democratic Republic. People's Democratic Party. Gotcha. Thank you for that. We live in a society 20.